Hey guys, Mike here. So today's cult classic review is 1983's Videodrome, starring James Woods as Max Wren. In Videodrome, when Max acquires a new kind of show for his station, his life and the future of media is warped into a terrifying new reality. And so we have Videodrome. So guys, this is a movie in this series before watching and reviewing it today. I had not seen it before, nor had I ever heard of this one. Before starting the film, didn't know who was in it, didn't know who directed it, didn't know anything about it, just went into this one completely blind. So, what did I think of Videodrome? Well, as the title credits rolled, I saw that David Cronenberg was the person who wrote and directed this film. So I thought that if this movie's not really any good, at least I'll have some great practical effects. And this movie does not fail to impress. Now, while the practical effects weren't as amazing as, say, The Fly or Naked Lunch, they definitely were something to behold. They really play excellently into this kind of warped reality that this world creates. And while all these effects may not make the most sense, they definitely are very impressive. And creativity is something that you can never knock David Cronenberg for. Now, while I haven't seen every single one of David Cronenberg's movies, and I've only seen really a handful, the practical effects always stand out. But honestly, nothing else really stood out to me about this film. Now, James Woods was completely fine. Again, he's another actor who I haven't seen that many things, but the odd few things I have seen him in, he's usually quite good. And while he's not terrible in this movie, his performance isn't really anything to write home about. I can't see him getting many accolades for this one, but at the same time, he's not exactly going to be ripped to shreds for this performance either. Basically, it does what it needs to do, and that's it. No more, no less. Now, pacing was a very odd one for this film, because Videodrome is about an hour and 27 minutes long, and it was very weird because I thought this movie could have been much longer, but at the same time, I'm very grateful that it wasn't any longer, because I feel like there was so much more that could have been explored within this story, but at the same time, what I did get didn't really make me want to watch anymore. Now, if I've understood this movie's message, I do kind of appreciate what it's trying to say. Basically, what I feel like this movie's trying to say, it's trying to point out the ridiculous nature of media warping people's minds. Basically, it's that kind of argument when people say video games make people violent, murder movies make people want to actually go out and kill people. And I've never agreed with that in the slightest. Basically, my argument with the video game thing is, when parents complain about their kids playing violent video games, all you need to say to them is, look at the box, what does that say? It says 15 or 18, how old is your child? About 12 or 13, then they should not be playing it then. It is your fault. It is your fault that your child has played that game. It is not the developer's responsibility for your kids looking at this stuff. They're there to entertain a mature audience, not kids. And throughout Videodrome as well, people make the odd comment about saying how violence is just becoming too normalised and how it's really affecting people. And while I do feel like the oversaturation of violence is normalising it for a lot of people, I don't think that it's making people violent. So basically, if the movie is pointing out how ridiculous this statement is, I'm definitely for it. Thought it was a good way of putting across the message. However, if David Cronenberg was trying to say that he believes in this notion of too much violence is really making people worse, then I'm totally against that. But honestly, with how over the top and like really mind-bending this film is, I think it's more the case of that he is against people saying this as opposed to agreeing with them. So on that point, I would say, good job, movie. Yeah, I know that was kind of a convoluted point to make, but it basically was how I saw the film. And it's after watching the movie, was I kind of able to put this all together and think of the movie in this way. However, during Videodrome, I just was not invested in this story in the slightest. Because like I said, the effects were good, but really nothing else was going for it. Even though the movie was short, the pacing was incredibly slow, and hardly anything was happening for long stretches of time. And when something was happening, you had no idea whether it was actually contributing to the story, or whether it was just another excuse to have a flashy or trippy effect. At the end of the day, guys, I think I'm only saying these positives because really you kind of have to look for the good and bad in a movie. If I was being brutally honest, I just didn't enjoy this movie all that much. Sure, there are things to appreciate, but for me, the bad definitely outweighs the good. So guys, would I consider Videodrome a personal cult classic, and would I recommend that you guys should see it? Now, David Cronenberg definitely has a very cult classic feel to him. You take one look at his movies and you realise that they are not for everyone. Not everyone will appreciate the subtext or the weird effects, but if you do, then, you know, more power to you. Because even though I don't really enjoy his movies all that much, I feel like David Cronenberg has a lot to offer to cinema. And I can see why a lot of people would call this one a personal cult classic. As for me, with all the bad things outweighing the good, I would not consider this one a personal cult classic. But as for whether or not you guys should see it, if I'm going on my own personal experience with this one, I would not recommend this film. Because to be honest, the only reason I watched Videodrome all the way to the end was so I could review it in its entirety. Because if I didn't have to review this one, I would have turned this off even before the halfway point. Because the story never really sucked me in, it never made me want to find out more. All it made me want to do was wonder when this one was going to end. And like I said, this movie probably actually could have been a bit longer, but at the end of the day, I'm just glad it wasn't longer. So the only reason I'd recommend this one is if you're really into David Cronenberg's movies. Otherwise, just give it a miss. Okay guys, that's my cult classic review of Videodrome. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Whatever you think, drop it in the comments below. Until next time, I've been Michael. See ya!